Man, you got Sophie Cunningham. She did it again. Sophie Cunningham absolutely embarrassed the Indiana Fever coaches, especially Brienne January, who's supposed to be the defensive guru. I mean, Stephanie White came here from Connecticut. They told me she was a defensive coach when she got here. But Sophie Cunningham blasted them, letting it be known, man, the defense sucks. Whatever they have us doing sucks. This whole thing.
That is a massive call-out from a player who has absolutely had enough of the internal excuses. When you have elite talent publicly declaring that your defensive scheme flat-out sucks, you are no longer dealing with a standard learning curve. You are dealing with a structural crisis inside the locker room. This is about accountability at the highest level of professional basketball, and right now, the leadership is failing to deliver. But the part that should actually bother you comes later, when we look at how the coaching staff responds to these critical defensive breakdowns, exposing a much deeper disconnect between the bench and the players on the floor.
Let's get into it.
Okay. We are not going to win very many games when people score 100 points on us, and they average, I think, around 80 points, and we let them score like 111. Our defense is horrible, and I think everyone knows that.
Okay.
We are not going to win very many games when people score 100 points on us, and they average, I think, around 80 points, and we let them score like 100.
When a player pulls up the actual mathematical reality of your execution on a public platform, the coaching staff cannot hide behind vague buzzwords anymore. Giving up 111 points to a team that typically averages 80 is not just a bad night at the office. It is a complete schematic failure. Basketball is a game of microscopic adjustments, but when you look at the floor positioning and the lack of defensive rotations, it becomes blindingly obvious that this team is playing without a clear blueprint. You cannot expect to compete in a league this sharp when you are essentially giving opponents a free runway to the basket every single possession. If you look at the championship caliber organizations in this league, their entire identity is anchored on defensive consistency and elite communication, two things that are completely absent from this squad right now.
For the defense. Who's responsible for the defense, you guys? That would be one Brienne January. Brienne January has had an atrocious defensive game plan from early on in the season to now. She started out switching everything 1 through 5. The defense was embarrassing. You were getting Caitlin Clark switched on to any and everybody, and it was absolutely...
Switching everything 1 through 5 is a defensive strategy that only works if you possess highly versatile, positionless defenders across the entire floor who can hold their ground against elite post players and lightning-fast guards alike. When you blindly implement a universal switching policy without assessing your roster personnel, you are actively creating mismatches for the opposing offense to exploit. Leaving a perimeter asset like Caitlin Clark isolated underneath the rim against bruising frontcourt players or forcing her to fight through screens without a weak side helper is architectural malpractice. It exhausts your primary offensive engine on the defensive end while turning your paint into an open buffet. This is exactly why the frustration is boiling over into the public eye, because the players are the ones taking the physical beating on the court while executing a game plan that sets them up to fail from the very first whistle.
Doing like, what? Let's get into this. You got Brienne January. This is Brienne January. You see her coming down right here, trying to calm Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham down on the bench. They're just disregarding her. Like, get out of here. Look, you see Sophie say, get out of my way. Get out of my face. Just get out of my face. And this is supposed...
Body language never lies in professional sports, and what we are seeing on that bench is a complete breakdown of authority and mutual trust. When players are actively dismissing an assistant coach who is supposed to be managing the defensive strategy, it shows that the locker room has lost faith in the whiteboard. You cannot coach players who have stopped believing in your information. Once the team decides that your instructions are actively making them worse, the instructions become background noise. This kind of visible insubordination on the sidelines is a massive red flag for any organization because it spreads through a roster like wildfire, creating a toxic environment where everyone is playing for themselves rather than buying into a unified collective system.
Addressing slippage, being able to really work, fine-tuning some details, and being able to add some things.
Slippage specifically, what do you view as those areas?
Well, there's always slippage. I mean, certainly. I think execution defensively, I think execution offensively. Really, when it comes to details, you need reps. And so the opportunity to get reps.
Talking about slippage and needing more repetitions is a classic administrative shield used to deflect from a fundamental lack of tactical preparation. Every single team in professional sports deals with limited practice time, tight travel schedules, and fatigue. But the great coaches find ways to optimize their film sessions and walkthroughs to maximize operational efficiency. When you hear a head coach minimize a massive defensive blowout by calling it a detail issue that just needs more reps, it sounds like an admission that they do not have an immediate strategic answer to the problem. You do not fix a broken house by just staring at the blueprints longer. You have to change the foundation of how you build. And right now, this coaching staff seems entirely content to watch the same errors repeat themselves night after night.
Them to be just on the learning curve defensively, or are they a little bit behind maybe where you expected? How would you gauge that side?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there was a clear-cut expectation with so many new people. You know, certainly when you add new pieces, different from what you had, and new pieces that, you know, some of them new to the league.
Wait a minute,
Saying there was no clear-cut expectation for a professional team is an absolute bombshell admission that should alarm every single fan and stakeholder investing in this franchise. Elite organizations do not roll the ball out onto the hardwood and just hope for the best based on vibes and luck. Leaders like Cheryl Reeve and Sandy Brondello establish rigorous, uncompromising baselines of defensive effort and positional discipline from day one of training camp, regardless of how many new pieces are added to the roster. Setting zero clear expectations gives your personnel permission to underachieve because there is no standard of excellence to hold them accountable to. It signals a passive coaching philosophy that relies on time to fix problems instead of active, rigorous intervention.
That you gauge it early, you think about what you want to do and what you want to put in, you gauge how quickly we're able to get to that point, and then how much retention there is. And so, you know, I think it's a group that would I like to be further along? Of course, I think every coach would. It is where we are, and I think now for us having an opportunity for a week to be able to get back to addressing some of those things and then seeing how much further we can push us.
An open week in the schedule is a luxury in professional basketball, but it only matters if the leadership possesses the tactical sharpness to diagnose the rot and implement real structural changes. If they spend this entire week of practice simply running the exact same failing defensive packages and expecting different results, then the retention they are talking about is actually going to work against them. The underlying issue is not that the players are failing to retain the information. The issue is that the information they are being forced to memorize is fundamentally flawed. When your foundational strategy is broken, perfect execution of that strategy still leads to a blowout loss. And that is the exact loop this franchise seems trapped in.
Clark, let's get into this.
I don't feel like legitimate WNBA fans. Caitlin did an individual workout this morning.
What does that entail for her? Is she with coaches for that? Is she just literally by herself?
No, she's with our player development coaches, with our medical staff, with our sports performance staff, and just working on some basketball skill stuff, movement pattern stuff as she continues to work her way back to full.
The handling of Caitlin Clark's medical status and individual workout routine raises serious questions about transparency and player management inside this facility. When your franchise cornerstone is dealing with physical setbacks that isolate her from full team activities, you cannot afford to manage the situation with vague, non-committal updates that keep everyone in the dark. A generational talent requires meticulous medical oversight and crystal-clear public communication to prevent unnecessary speculation and organizational instability. Working out alone with development coaches while the rest of the team tries to solve a defensive crisis on the floor creates an operational divide that makes it incredibly difficult to build real on-court chemistry when she finally returns.
Yeah, no, I think it's still too early.
Do you have a better idea, I guess, of just her status? Like, is she doing better with her back, or do you have more clarity, I guess, just on the injury itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think every day is a little bit better, right? Every day is a little bit better. And again, I reiterate for those who haven't had back issues, every day can be something different. You can feel really good in practices or workouts or warm-ups or whatever, and then you go to bed at night and you wake up and it's different. Or, if you sit at home and you're watching something on television, if you're watching the game or whatever else, you can wake up and it's different. I mean, it's the back is a nagging thing that manifests itself in different.
Describing a severe back issue as a nagging thing that changes completely from the time you go to bed to the time you wake up is an incredibly risky way to frame the health of your primary financial and competitive asset. Back injuries are notoriously deceptive in professional sports because they directly impact a player's core stability, lateral movement, and shooting mechanics. Trying to manage a structural issue like this on a daily guessing game basis without a definitive timeline or an aggressive, structured rehabilitation protocol is a recipe for long-term disaster. The pressure to win games should never overshadow the long-term physical preservation of a player who represents the entire future of your franchise.
Yeah, I don't think it's a new thing. I think it's a re-aggravation. Again, when you have a back, it's like every day is every day.
Admitting that this is a definitive re-aggravation confirms that the initial management of her recovery was deeply flawed. If a player returns to the floor only to immediately trigger the exact same physical issue, it means they were either rushed back prematurely to satisfy external expectations or the medical and coaching staffs failed to accurately gauge her physical readiness. This pattern of mismanagement on and off the court is exactly why fans and commentators are losing patience with the current regime. You cannot run a premier organization on guesswork, broken schemes, and deflected accountability. Is this coaching staff completely out of their depth, or do the players need to take more ownership of their performance on the floor? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to keep the vision alive, and I will see you on the next breakdown.